Welcome to this short presentation on the OSHA record-keeping regulation. There are two exemptions to OSHA's record-keeping requirements. The first exemption is for companies with 10 or fewer employees throughout the entire year. When counting employees, you must include full-time, part-time, temporary, and seasonal workers. This exemption is based on the employment of the entire company rather than the establishment. For example, if a company has two establishments, one with 5 employees and one with 7, the company must fill out the forms for each establishment because the company employment is greater than 10. The second exemption is for establishments classified in certain low-hazard industries. For example, all industries in agriculture, construction, manufacturing, transportation, utilities, and wholesale trade sectors are required to keep OSHA injury and illness records. But in the retail, finance, real estate, insurance, and service sectors, some industries are partially exempt. Establishments normally exempt from keeping the OSHA forms must complete the forms if they are informed in writing to do so by the Bureau of Labor Statistics or OSHA. Also, exempt establishments must report any work-related fatality, amputation, inpatient hospitalization, and the loss of an eye to Cal OSHA within 8 hours. There are 3 OSHA forms you have to complete. OSHA Forms 300 and 301 are maintained on an ongoing basis. Recordable injuries and illnesses must be entered on these forms as they occur throughout the year, so no lost days or restriction time is forgotten. Completing these forms throughout the year will help keep you on track. The OSHA Form 300A is completed after the end of the year, summarizing the number of recordable cases that occurred. An injury or illness meets the general recording criteria if it results in death, days away from work, restricted work or transfer to another job, medical treatment beyond first aid, or loss of consciousness. Let's define a few of these OSHA terms. Medical treatment beyond first aid includes prescription medications or non-prescription medications at prescription strength, as recommended by a physician. Immunizations like hepatitis B, but not including tetanus. Wound closing devices like surgical glue, stitches, and staples. Rigid stays means a device or system that immobilizes part of the body, like a splint. Therapeutic massages, including physical therapy or chiropractic treatments. And removal of a foreign object that is embedded in the eye. Significant diagnosed injury or illness is a work-related disorder diagnosed by a physician or identified by a positive test. This could be cancer, chronic irreversible diseases, fractured bones or teeth, punctured eardrum, and more recently, COVID. Loss of consciousness from a work-related injury or illness is also recordable. An example would be an employee exposed to fumes passing out, or an employee hit by an object and knocked unconscious. A loss of consciousness due solely to personal health conditions like diabetes or epilepsy is not recordable. What is considered work-related? Cases that are caused, contributed to, or significantly aggravated by events or exposures in the work environment are considered work-related for OSHA record-keeping purposes. Work-relatedness is presumed for injuries and illnesses occurring in the workplace or in locations where the employee is located as a condition of employment. It's important to remember that if work makes any contribution to the injury or illness, it is considered work-related for OSHA record-keeping purposes. There are certain activities that occur in the work environment that OSHA does not consider work-related. For example, injuries resulting directly from eating, drinking, or preparing one's own food at the workplace are not considered work-related. The first section to be completed on the OSHA 300 log is the year, establishment name, city, and state. The second section is regarding the injured employee and the injury. The case number can be any identifying character you prefer. Some people use the claim number, but I prefer numerical in the order the injuries were reported. The employee's name, job title, the month and date of the injury, where the injury occurred, such as a job site or the office, and a very basic description of the injury and the direct cause. An example is left shoulder strain from repetitive work. In the third section, check one box to classify the injury. The incident resulted in either a death, the employee lost time from work, or they stayed at work. If they stayed at work, was it because of job modification or transfer to a different position? Or did they get medical treatment and come back to work the next day? That would be another recordable case. We will go over this in more detail. If the employee lost time from work, write the number of days they missed, not including the day of the injury, or write the number of days they were on modified duty or job transfer. The final section is the type of injury. Only choose one. If there were multiple injuries, choose the most severe. Let's discuss a fatality case. John Doe fell from a roof at a project site. Enter a check mark in column G for death. Then put a check in column M whether the case involved an injury or illness. In this case, John Doe died from his injuries. Also, remember to report the fatality to Cal OSHA within 8 hours of learning of its occurrence. Now let's discuss a case with lost time. Bonehead, a painter, sprained his ankle from slipping on a wet surface in the warehouse. He was out of work for 12 days. For cases that involve 1 or more days away from work, put a check in column H and enter the number of calendar days the employee was away from work in column K. Then note in column M whether the case involves an injury or an illness. When counting days, be sure to count the days the employee would not have been able to work, regardless of whether they were scheduled or not. This would include weekends and holidays. Do not count the day of the injury. If the day count reaches 180 days, you may stop counting subsequent days and enter 180 in column K. Here is a case where the employee returned to work with restrictions or transferred to a different job. Smarty Pants was on the hippity-hoppity job site when he felt pain in his chest from inhaling fumes. He was transferred to a position in the office for 7 days. For cases that involve restricted work activity or job transfer, put a check mark in column I. Enter the number of calendar days the employee was restricted in column L. You count the days in the same manner as counting days away from work. Then note in column M whether the case involved an injury or illness. In this case, we would check respiratory condition. An employee is considered restricted if they are unable to work a full shift or unable to perform all work activities they would be expected to do at least once during a week. Here is a case where there was lost time and job restrictions. Jane Doe is an office administrator suffering from pain in her wrist due to typing and mousing. She is off of work for 4 days and then comes back to work with a doctor's note that she can only type for 4 hours a day. If a case involves both days away and days of restricted work activity, place a check mark in the days away column because it is the most serious outcome from the injury. Leave column I blank. Enter the correct day counts in both columns K and L. And again, note in column M whether the case involves an injury or illness. An An other recordable case is a work-related injury or illness that does not involve death, 1 or more days away from work, or 1 or more days of restricted work or a job transfer, and where the employee receives medical treatment beyond first aid. Silly Mo was cleaning out the warehouse and felt a strain in his shoulder while moving paint cans. He went to the clinic where they assessed him and prescribed him 800 milligrams of Motrin. Silly Mo went back to work the next day. For cases that involve medical treatment beyond first aid, place a check mark in column J. Then note in column M whether the case involves an injury or illness. For OSHA record-keeping purposes, medical treatment is any treatment for an injury or illness, except diagnostic procedures, observation and counseling, and first aid. Each establishment must complete the summary of work-related injuries and illnesses, even if no injuries or illnesses occurred during the year. Using the Form 300, count the individual entries you made for each category. Then write the totals on the left side of the Form 300A. If you had no cases, write in a 0. On the right side of the Form 300A, fill in the establishment information. Also, in this section of the form, the highest company official must certify that the entries on the summary are true, accurate, and complete. You must post a copy of the annual summary in each establishment in conspicuous places or places where notices to employees are customarily posted. It must be posted from February 1st until April 30th each year. Every injury or illness must be investigated within 7 business days by filling out the OSHA Form 301 or an equivalent. Many operations have their own accident investigation form, which can be used if it obtains the same information as the Form 301. These forms must be kept on file for 5 years following the year to which they pertain. You must also update the Form 300 with any changes that may occur to the recorded cases during that period. Do not send completed copies of the forms to OSHA unless required to do so. You must make the forms available to employees, former employees, their representatives, and to OSHA officials upon request. Keep in mind, the 300 log and Form 301 incident reports include information relating to employee health and can only be used in a manner that protects confidentiality to the extent possible.